right, good morning. So I hear that there is no better cure for a hangover than Rockit Day 2. So for those of you that went to the after party, thanks for getting up at 10 a.m. and joining us. Just 1 second while we get the slides loaded here. So today I want to talk about redesigning media to combat fake news. And if there was one thing that was apparent yesterday, and in talking to folks that were at Tech Camp, it is that this is a topic that everyone is curious about. But the thing that makes this topic a little bit difficult is that people have differing definitions of what fake news is. It's not really a well-defined term. So I think it's helpful to start with saying and defining the term fake news. And we'll start by saying what fake news is not. What fake news is not is news that was originally reported incorrectly, but later corrected. What fake news is not is fact-based reporting that has a partisan point of view. What fake news is not is news that you disagree with. And there's probably a lot of politicians who disagree with this statement. But what fake news is it has three key characteristics in my mind. The first is it is verifiably false. That's what makes it fake. The second is it promotes a particular political point of view or an agenda. It tries to reinforce a worldview. And the third is that it impersonates respectable media. It tries to take on the appearance of real media and confuse the issues. So is fake news really a new thing? I would argue it's not. I'm from the United States, and Benjamin Franklin was one of the founding fathers of the United States, and he made his money in the printing press business, and he printed newspapers. In the late 1700s, one of the newspapers he printed was called the Boston Independent Chronicle. And when he printed a newspaper, he added a supplement to the newspaper. He inserted it along with the regular newspaper, and the supplement actually told a story about a shipment that was being sent to the King of England from the American Indians, and it contained a bag full of scalps. The scalps of soldiers, the scalps of women and children, and it had a letter that said, "This is a gift from the American Indians to the King of England, and we want to work together." This story was completely made up, but it had real implications. Violence against American Indians actually increased. In the War of 1812, this fake news story was used as justification for the Indian War. So fake news isn't a new thing. It's been around. And in my childhood, this was the type of fake news that you saw. The tabloid, right? President Clinton rides in a UFO. Saddam and Osama got gay married and then adopt a shaved monkey. Or my favorite, a bat child with superpowers was found in a cave, and then 4 weeks later, he escaped. It's hard to contain a bat child. So, is it really a problem? What makes the present day different? Why is this a topic that everyone is concerned about? I would say yes, it is, and it's because of the scale that it exists at. Here is a graph of the top 20 election stories that were shared in the last 90 days of the US presidential election. And the thing is, fake news stories actually generated more likes, more views, more comments, and more shares than real news. Fake news was shared 9.7 million times. Real news was shared 7.3 million times. And this isn't just a problem in the US, it's a global problem. It's a problem in Ukraine. It's a problem in Moldova. It's a problem in Brazil, in Germany, in France, in China. So if we want to solve this problem, we have to start by understanding what are the root causes of fake news. What's led to its rise? And I think there's 7 of them that are worth discussing. The first is, it's an easy way to make money. You simply tell lies that people want to hear. I mentioned this on the panel yesterday. But Velez, Macedonia, small town, 40,000 people. During the 2016 US presidential election, over 100 active US political websites were ran out of Velez, Macedonia. And it's not because they're presidential news junkies. It's because it makes money. Sites like worldpoliticus.com. And when they interviewed some of the founders of this, these were the types of things they said. I started the site for an easy way to make money. The revenue from a small site is enough to afford many things. And even though most of those sites are small, not all of them are. This site gets 2 million visitors a month. The ad revenue is somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 a month. ABC News, a fake ABC News impersonator website, generated $500,000 in advertising last year. Why? How? Well, it's because dynamic ad platforms means that brands often don't even realize where they're advertising. If you noticed on that screenshot of the fake ABC News, at the very top of the page is an ad from CBS. CBS is a television station with a legitimate news operation. They don't want to advertise on a fake news site. They didn't even know that it showed up there. The fact is, they simply picked their audience targeting, and the ad was placed there without them realizing it. And the third reason is that the cost of counterfeiting digital media is really low. A few $100, domain name, some technical expertise, and you can create a fake news site. It's an easy investment. And because we live in a world in which we're inundated with social media, and social media is designed to encourage sharing, it's designed to increase virality, it's designed to make the share function frictionless, most of the time, we glance at something, we look at it, and if we agree with the essence of it, we just share. A lot of times we don't even read the full article. Fact-checking takes time. Sharing only takes a single touch. And it's really easy to create excitement or outrage when the truth doesn't matter. And this leads to virality. This means those stories spread, and they spread like wildfire. Emma mentioned this the other day. This is an example of a tweet from a gentleman. He's a YouTube hoaxer, and he released a video on Twitter that said he was kicked off a Delta Airlines flight for speaking Arabic to his mother. Most people were so incensed by the idea that you could get kicked off an airplane in the United States for speaking a foreign language that they shared it. They hit retweet. It later turned out not to be true. But at the time, people didn't fact check. They just retweeted. And when they retweeted, the filter bubbles in which they exist meant that most of the time, they didn't even encounter pushback. They shared fake news, and no one even called them out on it. And those filter bubbles don't just exist online. They increasingly exist all around us. The books we read, the movies we watch, the television shows we consume, the sermons we hear, all create a feedback loop that echoes back beliefs that we already have. And that's dangerous. It makes us more apt to have extreme beliefs, and it makes us more apt to share false information. Eli Parser, the gentleman who came up with the term filter bubble, says, filter bubbles dramatically amplify confirmation bias. Consuming information that conforms to our ideas of the world is easy and pleasurable. Consuming information that challenges us is frustrating and difficult. Jacob put it well the other day. He said, you don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to prove myself wrong. And the truth is, nowhere is this more apparent than on Facebook. The Wall Street Journal did a wonderful interactive experiment called blue feed versus red feed. In the United States, blue is considered liberal and red is considered conservative. And side by side, they showed the news feeds that each side wakes up to every morning. This morning, if you're looking at a liberal feed, you're likely to get a news story about a new Pew Research poll that says Donald Trump has a 39% approval rating, the lowest approval rating of any president at this point in his presidency ever. If you have a red feed, you're likely to wake up to a story that's from Rasmussen Reports that says his approval rating among likely voters is 55%. Two completely different stories, two completely different narratives, and they don't encounter each other. And the last reason is one that can't be understated, is that fake news has proven to be an effective propaganda tool for foreign governments. And even if the stories themselves aren't adopted by the real news media, it muddies the water. It makes things difficult. It makes people's trust in traditional media decline. Just this week, NATO released a new report that says it's seen a sharp rise in Russian fake news since the Kremlin seized Crimea. And that's true around the world. So if we're going to solve this problem, if we're going to combat fake news, it's important to see which of these problems can we actually solve. First, we need to start with breaking the business model. How do we remove the financial incentive? And it's relatively easy because no advertiser wants to be part of a scam. Right? Google and Facebook took a step this fall that actually they removed fake news websites from their, put it in their policies so that they could no longer give ad revenue to fake news websites. And this is great. Google says users don't want to be misled by content they engage with online. For this reason, ads may not be placed on pages that misrepresent, misstate, or conceal information. Good job, Google. They've kicked off around 200, 300 sites. But you can still go to their ad planner tool and buy ad space, even as of this morning, on fake news sites like World Politic US. So while they've updated their policies, they haven't updated their processes and procedures. They're not taking these new standards seriously enough to improve verification and reporting. They're not letting people report when ads are on fake news sites, and they're not verifying when people apply to join the ad networks. On the other side of the coin, we also need to hold brands and advertisers accountable for where their ads show up. There's an effort in the US called Sleeping Giants, and what they do is they call out advertisers when their ads show up on anti-Semitic or racist websites. So if you're Nestle chocolate and your banner ad shows up next to a story denying the Holocaust, they call it out. And they say, hey, Nestle, here's a screenshot of your ad next to a story denying the Holocaust. Is that your corporate opinion? And they immediately take down the ad. Thousands of brands have removed their ads through this effort. It's because public shaming works. Brands want to keep their customers happy. They don't want to be seen as having racist or homophobic or anti-Semitic views. But what do you do when it's a government, not a business model driving fake news? In that approach, you can't just fact check. You have to take active countermeasures. Stop Fake in Ukraine is a great example of this. Yes, they call out when a fake news story shows up, but they also try to look at it and say, what is the underlying story? What is the connective tissue between the organization that generated the news? So Kharkov News Agency is a great example. They published a report that clearly explained that the Kharkov News Agency is a news agency that pretends to operate in Ukraine, is actually located in St. Petersburg, and the domain name is owned by Russian news media. They shined a light on that, and they discredited the whole organization. It's not enough to fact-check individual stories. You have to fight the entire narrative. The other thing we have to do is, how do we spread the truth at the time that a user actually sees, engages, or interacts with the article? So 40% of people use Facebook as their primary news source. This is more people than watch the morning news or read a newspaper. It's a pretty incredible number. So Facebook has a responsibility to help solve this problem. And after what happened in the US in 2016, they've taken some steps. They released new tools in Germany and France that made reporting fake news easier. Now you simply 2 clicks and you can report something as fake news. It then goes to a third-party fact-checking, nonpartisan fact-checking verification service, and they say, is this fake news or not? And if it is, they badge it with a truth warning, so that anyone that sees this post says, warning, this hasn't been verified and is likely untrue. So it's a step in the right direction. The other thing we have to do is, how do we take that idea and expand it outside of Facebook? Fake News Monitor is a browser extension you can install in Google Chrome. When you're browsing the web, if you come across a site that is an unreliable source, it'll give you a warning. It'll say, this is not likely reliable. It's scored 2 out of 10 based on our factor. Fact check it. But what if we made that something people didn't have to seek out? What if, just like the lock that shows up in the browser bar when you're shopping on e-commerce that says, it's safe to enter my credit card, we had something that said, this site is verified and actually upholds journalistic standards. And we applied it outside, across the entire web. I talked earlier about the danger of the filter bubble, and it's something that we have to figure out, because it does actually degrade democracy. So how do we pop that filter bubble? What if you were to look at Facebook, and what if they were to be more intentional in trying to introduce alternative viewpoints? What if they highlighted articles with contrasting views? That if someone publishes an article that says scientists prove Santa Claus is real, maybe below it, they highlight another viewpoint from a trusted, reliable source that says Santa Claus is still a myth. They've crushed all the dreams of toddlers and children across the globe. And this is the challenge that faces us. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. Once it's in the wild, a lie spreads. So it's up to us to combat it. It's up to us to fight it. We can't be caught with our shoes off. And we need to take every step we can to combat the problem of fake news. And it's not an easy problem. If it was, someone would have already solved it. We need to improve the way that ad networks verify their publishers. We need to hold brands accountable for the sites their ads show up on. When it is from a governmental source, we need to take active countermeasures, and we need to win at the point of engagement. We have to get better. And then we all have to strive to pop the filter bubbles that not just others live in, but ourselves. Thank you.